The following broadcast is a presentation of Mount Zion Media Ministry.
This morning again comes from the book of Nehemiah, and I'll read from the screen, and we're going to read verses 17 through 20, but you read from whatever version or device you have, or hard copy Bible. Then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me. They replied, let us start rebuilding. So they began this good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. What is this you are doing, they asked. Are you rebelling against the king? Amen. You may be seated. Still preaching under this general theme of moving from vision to victory, I want to preach from subtopic, if you will, today, how to overcome your adversaries. How to overcome your adversaries. I think I can pretty safely say, if not all, almost all of us, at some point in time, even maybe right now, we've had to deal with adversaries, folk who oppose us, folk who fight against us, folk who try to make life difficult and hard for us. Adversaries who create situations that are not favorable. And some of us, as we've had to deal with our adversaries, we have been successful in overcoming them. But there are others, and that's who I want to talk with today. Those of us who struggle with our adversaries. Some of you have been struggling with the same adversary for years. And some of you just started struggling this week or last week. But no matter how long you've been struggling, I've come to say that God's goal for your life is not to struggle with your adversaries, but to overcome them. And how do you know, Pastor? Because he said in the book of John chapter 16, that last verse, he said, in this world, you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, because I have overcome the world. And what he's saying is, if I have overcome, and you are in me, and I am in you, then I will help you overcome too. And so we ought to be overcomers. Say, I'm an overcomer. Yeah, and so today what I want to do is help you. Again, those of us that still struggle, and that's me, to learn how, because there's a method to it. And one of the methods, a template we find in this story about Nehemiah and how he dealt with his adversaries. So here we go. Here's the story. As I read in the text, Nehemiah has come on an assignment from God to rebuild the wall, to rebuild homes and secure the city and help the people establish a secure and safe and prosperous life. God is on his side. He's come back and he's cast a vision, and the people that he cast a vision to, who are the people who belong to that community, they bought into the vision and they are ready to work. And once they indicate that, he says, let us go build. And then they say, in response, let us go build. And so they go to work. And immediately following the indication that they are going to work, the Bible identifies 3 people who became their adversaries. 3 men who decided that they would lead the opposition. And so, as we examine how Nehemiah responded, I want you to make some notes, because again, when your adversaries come, even the ones you're dealing with now, these notes will help you. And here is the first thing I want you to note that Nehemiah did to overcome the adversaries. When the adversaries come, if you're going to overcome them, you've got to have the right mindset. And here is the mindset that Nehemiah had. He understood the psychology of adversaries. And part of that psychology is this right here. And you got to get it, you got to embrace it, and you got to just walk in it every day. And here it is. The adversarial actions that are sent your way, don't take it personal, because it's not. It is not personal. If your mindset is, they just coming after me, if you make it about you, then your feelings and your emotions will blind the wisdom and the guidance that God is trying to give you, because you so caught up in you. But listen to me, Nehemiah shows us that it wasn't even personal. It's bigger than you. Pastor, if it's not personal, what it's about? It is about Nehemiah's assignment. The adversaries come after him because of what God has called him to do. Listen at what they said, and here it is. It said in that verse, in the text that we read, here is the question. They say, let us rebuild. Then Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, when they heard about it, they asked them, are you rebelling against the king? And with that statement, they put them on notice that they were getting ready to come after them. But to understand how this thing is not personal, you've got to go back to verse 10. It don't start in verse 20, but it starts in verse 10. It says, here is the why. Here's the why. It is because they were disturbed. Look at verse 10. They were disturbed because somebody had come to promote the welfare of the Israelites. And that's from the New International Version. They were mad with Nehemiah and the people because of the assignment to promote, to stabilize the Israelite community. It could have been anybody else, and their response would have been the same, because it wasn't personal. It was bigger than that. It's about what they came to do. Pastor Simmons, why would they be so upset about that? Because you got to understand the psychology of these adversaries. They're not concerned about Nehemiah because he's not a threat. Here is the threat. In order for some people to be who they are in their mind, they have to have other people that they keep in an inferior position. Some people can't feel important unless they make you unimportant. You got to understand the psychology. These 3 men are a part of the power structure. They got prestige, they got privilege. And the only way they can maintain that is to keep the Israelites in a subservient place. If they're able to build the walls back, to make themselves secure, to defend themselves, to fight for themselves, then they pose a threat And so you got to keep them in their place. And if Nehemiah is the person responsible for getting them out of their place, then we got to check him, but it ain't about him. Not only do they have power and prestige, but they are prospering. Somebody got to provide the cheap labor. Somebody got to work so that they can be enriched. Somebody got to serve. Somebody got to clean the house. Somebody got to do the domestic chores. Somebody has to serve me. And if you mess around and elevate yourself, some people can't think they're cute unless they convince you ugly. Some people can't feel gifted until they intimidate you and make you doubt your gift. Y'all better hear me. And so Nehemiah understood that, and so he did not take it personal. And here's the other psychology. And I got these. I had the scriptures. I was going to read them to you, but time won't permit me to do that because I feel like a little preaching coming on. So let me go and preach this thing. And so not only once you remember that it's not personal, but if you're going to understand the psychology of your adversary, you got to understand it's progressive. And don't be alarmed when the aggression starts. So in verse 10, Nehemiah comes back and he makes the announcement, and the Bible just tells us that Tobiah and the fellows didn't like it. But at that point, they didn't do anything because it was just this concept, this idea that was being talked about. But as soon as Nehemiah and the fellows went to work and the women went to work, this thing started progressing. It went from just being angry and keeping our feelings to ourselves. They started expressing their displeasure to them and making false accusations. Are you rebelling against the king? And that was a veiled threat to say, you rebel against the king, he will come and get you. But it didn't stop them. They kept working. And so then the fellows ramped it up. It got more progressive. Then they came to the job site and they start mocking and ridiculing the workers. What are y'all building? That little thing, that little wall y'all trying to build? A fox can knock that down. Y'all don't know what y'all doing. Y'all will never finish it. You people are not qualified to do that. You people don't know what you're doing. And then because they had friends, they got friends who were working on the wall to say, hey, why don't you sabotage the work for us? Keep us informed. When y'all have your meetings, come back and tell us what's going on. And so they tried that, but that didn't work. They just kept on working. So then they decided that they would begin to threaten them with violence. And they got a plan together to come and fight against them. They were really going to bring physical harm to the people. And I'm going to tell you how they stopped that. But then that didn't stop them. They kept on building. And then we find out that the last thing they did is they tried to use political leverage. They wrote a letter to the king and said, look here, Mr. Nehemiah, if you don't stop, this is what we're going to send to the king. Here's the letter. This man Nehemiah you sent down here along with these other folk, they're down here rebuilding the wall, and Nehemiah told you a lie. He said he was going to come back, but he's going to make himself Israel's king. And then they're going to rebel against you, so king, you better come down here and stop them. But that didn't stop them either. They kept on building. And so you got to understand that when the adversaries start progressively moving that stuff forward and coming harder at you, don't ask yourself why as if it's about you. You've done something. You don't have to do anything. It's just the psychology of the adversary to take you out. There is no limit when they are threatened by what your assignment is. And part of that is because it's the threats I talked to you about, but also the devil is working in them. Because it's a God's assignment, and the devil is God's adversary. So then you got to move from the psychology. If you want to overcome, you got to learn how to do this. You got to learn how to fight and work at the same time. Because the story says that when they made those threats that I told you about, the violence, Nehemiah got them together and said, look, we've heard that they're planning to attack us, and so this is what we're going to do. We're praying to God, but this is what we're going to do. I want you to get a trowel in one hand. That's a working tool. And a weapon in the other hand. And we're going to switch out, and some going to work and some going to watch. And even those who are working, you're going to have your sword in one hand and a trowel in the other. So we're going to be ready to fight and work at the same time. That requires focus. And what he's saying is, don't give so much of your attention to the adversary that you can't work. But don't be so lost in your work that when the adversary comes, you can't cut that. You got to be able to fight and work at the same time. See, some of you can't focus where you are because all your attention is on the adversary. What they're thinking, what they're doing. But babe, start working on what God gave you to do, and don't give them all of your attention, because I got some good news coming up in the end. You're going to win. Why? Just wrestling with why and crying, watching them. God got your back. And just so somebody don't run out and say, Pastor Simmons told me to cut you. They had a real sword, but this is our sword. We got the sword of the Spirit. We recognize that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and power and spiritual wickedness in high places. And let me move from this point, but here is what I want to say to you to drive this home. You and I have to get rid of the myth that to be Christian is to be passive. That you become a doormat for folk to run over you. Turn the cheek is a metaphor and not something that God intends for you to literally do every day. What do you mean, Pastor? Said if somebody slap you, turn the other one. God is not looking for you to just slap. Okay, slap me on that side. Pop, slap me on that side. But Pastor, when Peter was in the garden with Jesus, when they came to arrest him, he cut the ear off. Jesus told him to put the sword up. He did. Because at that point, Jesus had another plan. And his plan was to be arrested. And so Peter didn't need to cut him. He just put his ear back on. But after the resurrection, he told him, I told you before, don't take no sword, but I'm telling you now, you better take your one. And so don't be a doormat. It's all right to fight for your assignment. Now, don't run around fighting for yourself, following up everything that it been messing with me and I got to. No, not you, because it ain't about you. It's bigger than you. Now, this verse I got to read because it's classic. So here's the third thing to overcome. You overcome your adversary by magnifying your assignment and minimizing your adversary. Nehemiah 6, 1 through 4, NIV. When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies, they picked up some more that I had rebuilt the wall, and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors and the gates. Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message: come down, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. But they were scheming to harm me. So I sent messages to them with this reply: I am carrying on a great work and cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. Nehemiah magnified the assignment and minimized his adversaries. What do you mean, Pastor? You got to make sure that your assignment is bigger to you than your adversary. You got to make sure that what you are trying to accomplish is of so much value to you that you're willing to endure the ridicule, the mocking, the threats from your adversary, because in the end, your assignment matters more than your feelings. Your assignment matters more than your reputation. Your assignment matters more than how you feel about what somebody says about you. Your assignment is bigger than what they're doing, but listen, it's also bigger than the person. I like the link. Don't go down when you up high, dealing with stuff that folk down there don't understand. Even when you have a conversation they can't comprehend, and he told you the only reason they want to talk is because they want to harm you. And the only way they can harm you is to bring you down to their level. Don't come down to the gutter. Cuss me all you want. I got another language for you. Bless those that curse you and say all manner of evil about you. Don't come down to fight like they fight, but stay up high and continue to work. Because the work you're doing is much bigger than them and bigger than that. And you have to realize that our folk will get you down. I don't know who I'm talking to, but God has you on assignment, and you've been tempted to come down, have a conversation, and they dressed it up. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to leave that for a minute. Come on, everybody need a break. Everybody need a little relax. Like, come on, I might be able to help you. I don't need your help because God is on my side. So just keep magnifying. And let me tell you something. To magnify the assignment, you got to be the gatekeeper on your thoughts. Don't let your mind run making the adversary and their stuff bigger than it is. Because in reality, it's nothing compared to the God who gave you the assignment. And here it is, Nehemiah 2, verse 20, my last point. You overcome by trusting God to give you the victory. You overcome by trusting God to give you the victory. And here it is. When they're talking to Nehemiah, his answer in verse 20, in that initial conversation about opposing him, he said, I answered them saying, the God of heaven will give us success. Can you trust God to give you success in overcoming your adversaries? You got to remember now, he gave you the assignment, but the outcome for the assignment was not given to you. The work was, there was various tasks, but the outcome is in God's hand. Nehemiah, y'all just get on the wall to build. I've given you all the resources you need, and you need one more thing, and that's protection from your adversaries. You need the power to overcome. And so Nehemiah, I'm going to give you that. He gave him people who were energized and empowered to defend themselves, to work and fight at the same time. He gave Nehemiah the stamina and the wisdom to know how to lead them in the battle and know how to respond to his enemies. God will do that for you. But here's the other thing God will do. God will fight your battles. Because when you read the story, here's what you're going to find out. That while they had the trowel in one hand and the sword in the other hand, they never had to fight themselves. Even though they were prepared to fight, the text says that God fought for them. Every scheme and everything that Tobiah and the boys came up with, God caused the plan to backfire. And I'm trying to tell you today that you can overcome if you can just stand and trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not into your own understanding, but in all of your ways acknowledge him and watch him direct your path. Can I recommend something to you? Every morning you get up and every night you go to bed. And depending upon how aggressive your adversary is, you might have to say it even at the noonday. But stand in front of the mirror and say, I'm trusting God to give me success. You got to look in the mirror and talk to yourself and say, self, I am who God says I am. Self, I can do what God said I can do. Say, self, the assignment that God has on my life, I'm going to finish it, not because I'm strong, not because I'm wise, not because of who I know, but I'm going to finish it because God is going to give me success. Tell yourself, and the success that God is going to give, it's going to blow my mind, it's going to blow the Israelites' mind, and it's going to blow the adversaries' mind, because God is able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above anything and everything that I could ever think, because eyes hadn't seen and ears hadn't heard the goodness of God and what he has in store for us. And then to help control your mind, you got to use your sanctified imagination and point your finger in the adversary's eye and say, hit me with your best shot. And when your best shot is over, there's a God that got another shot, and his shot is bigger than your shot, and you do what you want to do. But I got some news for you. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. I got news for you. You think you got me because of who you got on your side, but you don't have me, because greater is he that's in me than he that is against me. And all the folk on your side, you gotta tell him, point your finger in the adversary's mind. You may think that you got the power on your side, you got the right folk on your side, you got the system on your side, but I got somebody who's on my side, and God has elevated him, and his name is above every name. And at the name of Jesus, every knee got to bow. At the name of Jesus, every tongue got to confess. And when God get ready, everybody got to move. When God get ready, the White House gonna turn. When God get ready, the economy gonna turn. When God gets ready, the victory, it will be mine.
Thanks for watching. Be blessed and continue walking in the light.